Welcome to episode 12 of Bytes. And as promised, I have a guest today, which is absolutely amazing. I have been promising this for probably the last 2 or 3 episodes, saying that I must get outside my comfort zone and actually speak to somebody.
Brilliant. So am I your first?
You're the first official guest on
Bytes.
It is an honour. You've got to play this to your grandchildren back
absolutely.
in the day. Okay, so today I am introducing you to Lorelei from HolaPR, who is a fellow, what would you call it? A fellow I was going to say inmate. Not an inmate, a fellow occupant of the shared studio that we both work out of.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we've known each other for a year or 2 year and a half or so.
Yeah, maybe about a year and a half, I think now. Quickly.
Yes, so Lorelei is in charge of HolaPR. And I suppose initially it'd be just great to hear a little bit about your story, about why you are where you are today.
Yeah, sure. So I, have worked in PR my entire life. So that has been my career from day one, which is probably quite unusual, I think, these days.
When you say day one, do you mean sort of from school
time?
time?
Yeah, so I actually studied a Bachelor of Commerce with a major in Public Relations and Marketing.
Okay. Yeah.
So my university degree was in PR basically, and it is a job that I have done the whole way through, which I do. And that's probably about 20 years too now, which is scary when I say such a big number. But so I've always worked in it and I love it. So I've worked in a whole host of different roles actually. So my career sort of started in-house with organisations. So I started off with a not-for-profit was my first job out of uni, which was a great learning curve because you learn to be creative with no money.
Yeah, I was going to say, was it a paid position or sort of a minimal sort of paid position?
Yeah, so I think, my starting salary I think was like $26,500 a year, Australian dollars a year.
Yeah.
So, not a big salary, but exciting for your first job, all the same.
Do you remember the sort of first few days of what you were doing when you first started?
Yeah, so I do remember. I can picture exactly my desk and, where I sat in the office and the people that I work with too.
Yeah.
So a lot of my role actually initially, which I think was a great learning curve, was working with volunteers. So there was volunteers that had an interest in communications that would help out with various things. So the organisation was actually Guides, so the Girl Guides, but Guides Victoria. So I was living in Melbourne at the time. So I had to deal a lot with volunteers, come up with sort of creative, a lot of it was media campaigns and events, come up with creative ideas just to kind of get the Girl Guides in the media. And that was a interesting brand to work on anyway, because
they're an international brand, isn't it? So.
Absolutely, an international brand, and also they'd gone through just before I'd got there sort of a real branding away from this concept of Girl Guides to just Guides. So it was a really interesting time actually, and a great first job. But
what technology did you have at hand back
then?
then?
My goodness, we were still faxing press releases, which no one. Someone asked me, do you have a fax the other day? And I just said, you're kidding me, right? Do you not just scan things and email them now if you have to do something like that? Yeah, so we were still faxing press releases, which just is, I don't know, it's a completely different world now.
Yeah. And that volunteer space, I mean, even to this day, you're still involved quite a bit with the volunteer area and not-for-profits.
Yeah, absolutely. So I still do a fair bit of work for not-for-profits. In fact, I love that side of my job. So I'll always make sure that, so now in my sort of role as a consultant, I'll always make sure I've got a not-for-profit that I'm working with somewhere. And to be honest, it's lovely work to do because you feel like you're doing something that is really particularly meaningful, but equally, it's an easy job to do too because generally the stories are amazing. So, it's easy PR.
To me, PR it's something I've not struggled to understand what PR is, but I've been in the graphic design, the marketing area for a long time, but PR has always been this sort of separate entity that I've never really fully understood.
Yeah.
Thinking very corporate, sort of. But what's your definition of PR? What would you say?
I knew you were going to ask me that. And I was going to say, actually, it's interesting in that I think as an industry, we really complicate it as well. Yep. So sometimes when you get asked that question, it's like, oh gosh, how do I explain this? Yep. But I think in its simplest form, and even though, I've worked in the industry for 20 years and it's changed a lot in one sense during that time, actually the fundamentals of it haven't changed. And I guess the easiest way of explaining it is that we work with organisations to get their messages out to their ideal audience or people that they really want to hear their messages. Yep. But generally the medium through which we'll do that is sort of, it is a medium, so it's an influencing medium. So whether that is, a journalist that writes for a newspaper, these days, whether it's a blogger or an Instagrammer that's got really strong influence, or whether it's through owned channels as well. So,
what do you mean by owned channels?
So it could be, a lot of the work that I still will work on is, writing great content for organisations. So it might be a blog post, we'll work with them, and it's not a skill set that I have, but we'll have external parties that I work with to develop great video content for them. Email newsletters, that sort of thing. So I guess it's the different, and often people get really confused, well then how does marketing fit in? And I think now the lines are blurred more than they ever have been with the digital space.
And that's something I do want to talk about, is that change in industry over the last probably 10 years.
Yeah, which has been a huge change, because I think previously PR had its own little set and we were basically all the soft stuff. So it was media, getting clients in the media. Yep. It was doing events. It was potentially coming up with sponsorships or partnerships that you could leverage that they were involved in. So it's all that lovely third-party endorsement stuff. Yep. Digital came into play, and suddenly third-party endorsers could be, like I said before, the Instagrammers, the YouTubers, people that have a very strong voice online, and that is where I think marketing and PR just went, okay, who owns this space?
So have you found yourself over that time having to learn a lot more in regards to the digital side? Or is it something that's just part and parcel of PR anyway, and it's just in the evolution of PR?
Yeah.
You've just learned along the way, or is it something you've actually had to really instigate yourself to go deeper onto certain platforms, social media?
So I think, as I was saying before, I think the fundamentals of the great, compelling, authentic story on behalf of an organisation was the same when we were faxing media releases to what it is now. So that those communication fundamentals that PR has played a part in, that hasn't changed. They're telling a good story to the right people. Yeah,
and if anything, that's probably the most powerful element to it.
Absolutely.
So you're kind of ahead of the game there, because a lot of people are trying to use digital but don't have the engagement, the stories, the emotional connection with the audience, which PR obviously is in the blood of PR.
Yes, absolutely. So but you're so right when you say then it's the medium that's changed completely. So we've had to shift our thinking and go, okay, maybe a journalist that's writing for a particular newspaper actually doesn't have as much influence as a blogger on the same topic. So it's always about sort of matching your client's audience with where they hang out. And so absolutely we've had to look at tools to go, okay, and so social media and the influencer space, I think, has been the thing that's seen the biggest shift in the last couple of years in PR. And I think even that's been, influencers have been finding their feet in terms of how do they work with companies and PR agencies.
It's learning going on both sides.
So it's learning in both, which I actually think is a good thing. It just means everyone's finding their feet together.
It's a very exciting time, I think, in this space.
Absolutely. And I think it's great. Like I remember when social media first came in, so trying to convince, clients that I worked with that social media is a space that you should be considering. a lot of them were like, oh my goodness, but what if people say bad stuff about us? Oh, this is
The
really
fear is-
scary. The
yeah,
fear
yeah,
was
yeah.
huge. I think that's really shifted now, and that people can see its value. But
Although, do you think that still exists, doesn't it? With
oh, absolutely, it
yeah.
does. But I always say to people, people are going to be saying this about you anyway. Whether it's it's like you get this little insight into the car park conversations that you never would have had a chance to hear before. So it's great. You actually get to be part of the conversation now, which before you might not have. So yeah, I don't think it's a scary thing at all. I actually see huge positives in it.
And was that a role traditionally in PR? Was the sort of something breaks out about a company, about an organisation that was maybe negative? Was it the role of PR to come in and try and smooth the path?
So that's
become a convert.
Huge part of PR. So there's organisations that will specialise in issues and crisis management. So I don't do a huge amount of that in my existing role, but I have done in the past. I worked for a mining company here in Australia, and then also the London Underground in the UK.
Oh, wow, okay.
So issues and crisis management were a huge part of my role then. And so, and I guess that's another huge component of PR is basically we're almost the guardians of a reputation of an organisation. So reputation management is huge.
Which is a massive part of social media.
Absolutely.
So that connection again is so strong.
So monitoring and listening is huge for anyone in PR. So I've got I've got social and media monitoring for all of my clients. So that's not just media or social media that I'm generating for them. It's stuff that anyone else is saying. And it might be just also about it's trying to keep in track of trends in their industry as well. So there is a very big role in PR of just that listening, monitoring, tracking where trends are, where an organisation's reputation is sitting in their own industry or a broader community.
There's so much noise out there, isn't there? I mean, this is the problem with... I mean, PR back in the day, you only had certain avenues where they were able to broadcast or be seen, whereas now it's like... everywhere, absolutely everywhere, at any stage, your company can pop up in whatever guise.
And sometimes I feel like, I can spend days working on a particular client with the idea of their story not hitting the media. That can be a big part of the role as well, is to, sometimes someone will pick up on something and it's really not a story and it's not something that you want necessarily to be out there. So that can be another part of the role where you feel like you do a whole lot of work for actually zero output, but that's the positive result that you
it was much. I think it's a much longer game now. You don't have that influence in that sort of what am I trying to say? It's with social media and branding and reputation. It's sort of it's a long game. It's not you can't just do PR for a month and then hope.
And that's what PR has always been. And I remember when people would ask, marketing versus PR, and I'll often say to clients, actually, you need to do, if you need to sell tickets to something by X date or so many widgets by a certain date, actually PR's too long a stretch for you. I've absolutely had instances where it's been quite a retail campaign and they've got media, so they've got inquiries or people going onto their website to go, I'm really interested in buying X widget. But it is absolutely a slow burn, long-term strategy, not a quick fix.
Yeah, well, it sounds like PR is definitely not a dying trade. It sounds, if anything, it's got the skills for this kind of new digital world already. So,
absolutely.
I mean, are you positioning yourself different just now in regards to conversations you're having, or how you market yourself, or PR your own company?
Well, we were talking about this before, Michael. I'm not particularly good at my own PR, or maybe I'm just too busy concentrating on working for my clients.
I'm the same. The plumber with the dripping tap. Yeah.
Exactly. But I do. So still traditionally, I think a lot of people who think they need someone to work with in PR will at first come thinking, I really want to see my name in print in a newspaper. So there is a lot more of an education process now with clients or people who are considering using someone in PR, that actually, let's take a step back. You might think that you want to be on Today Tonight, but unless your audience are watching Today Tonight, there is 0 point in that.
Exactly, yeah.
Whereas, you know, your audience might actually be, you know, consuming content from YouTube,
yeah.
you know, like, so you've just got to consider. So it's always, I think there is still a mindset that PR equals media relations.
And traditional media,
traditional
TV,
media.
radio, newspaper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to be honest, that is still a large part of what I do, without a doubt. But there is a lot more to it. So there is, and I think that is just an education process with people, clients, and maybe as an industry, so, you know, we've got to communicate that a bit better as well.
Do you think some of the bigger players in PR are not adapting very well to the change?
Yeah, so I think most are now. I think some were slow initially, probably 3 or 4 years ago.
Wow, okay.
Because, I think maybe they were just a bit, okay, is this a realm we want to get into? But I think most are actually understand now that that's a huge part of what they do. A lot of smart PR agencies also with, you know, started to diversify in terms of bringing in graphic design under their umbrella and that sort of thing, which I think was smart as well.
And probably web and
a lot have now bought that in. So I think that's actually where, particularly in the Perth market, a lot of the big agencies, a lot of the big marketing agencies, are now bringing in PR under their arm because they see the value of it. And a lot of the big marketing agencies as well, I guess, particularly in our Perth market, clients aren't necessarily spending as much on big TV ad campaigns and that sort of thing. So they've had to diversify their offering as well. So I think now people are fairly caught up, but I think certainly a few years ago there was maybe a hesitation to go into certain areas or think, you know, is this really going to be take off or is this just I
think that, one of the biggest changes, obviously being in digital marketing myself, is the swing from being reliant on traditional media to actually becoming the media. A company has the ability now, as we're doing now, to be their own voice, which is a very powerful thing, but with help obviously from sort of experts in the field in PR, but sort of you're not so reliant on
that is so true
on TV or you're not reliant on TV anymore. There's YouTubers out there that have 65 million subscribers. Even back in the day, TV radio would have dreamed of having that sort of reach, and it's real engaging reach as well.
That's what I think. It's very authentic. People are choosing to consume that versus having it just.
And that comes down to guys like you being able to provide stories, proper stories, and that's where I think. Going by this conversation, PR is about that authenticity of the client, the stories, and you being able to sort of get that out and then broadcast it to wherever.
Absolutely.
It's very
I like
exciting.
that. Good summary.
Good summary. That was a nice summary, wasn't it? I do have one quick question.
Yeah.
Why do you call yourself Bob when you pick up coffees? You know, people ask obviously for names when they order a coffee, and your name is Bob. Yes,
so Bob is my coffee name because a name like Lorelei, people are always like, huh? How do you spell that? What? What did you say? What was that? So I just have given up actually, and I figure no one can spell Bob incorrectly, pronounce it incorrectly.
How do you spell that?
Yeah, it's easy.
Well, I think my coffee name from now on is going to be Lorelei.
Nice. Let me know how you go. I'm going to test it
out and see how we go and live in your shoes for a while, and I may change it back. But Lorelei from HolaPR, thank you very much. And where can people find you online? Okay, so I have, obviously my website is the main spot to see me, which is holapr.com.au, and I occasionally blog there. Haven't done in a little while. Promise to do it now. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram. Cool. I have some profiles there. If you want to come and join me there too. Excellent. Hola, obviously Spanish for hello. Yes. So the name came about because I really like the whole concept of just starting a client starting a conversation with their customers, and Hola is really fun, bright. Cute way to start that. Hello, I'm Bob. Yeah. No worries. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. No worries. That's been good. Awesome.